This looked like some kind of Victorian church, or maybe a forgotten industrial palace. Colorful iron columns, decorative details, a huge open space. It even felt a little sacred. But this building was built for one reason only: to deal with London's sewage. Yes, sewage. And it made me wonder who would build a sewage station to look like a palace. To answer that, we have to go back to a crisis that nearly pushed London out of control. By the mid-19th century, London had already become one of the largest cities in the world. The population was growing fast, but there was one problem almost nobody had truly solved. Where was all the waste supposed to go? And strangely, part of the problem came from something that was meant to represent progress: the flush toilet. To people at that time, it meant cleaner, more modern living. But there was one problem. The smell left the house, but it never left the city. More and more sewage ended up in the River Thames, a river that also supplied drinking water. Cholera returned again and again, and thousands of people died. But the thing that finally forced London to stop ignoring the problem was something else. In the summer of 1858, London became unbearably smelly. The heat turned the River Thames into something close to an open sewer. The smell became so bad, even Parliament struggled to function. London had become so successful, and it was beginning to collapse under its own growth. But interestingly, before the Great Stink, the answer was already there. In the 1850s, an engineer named Joseph Bazalgette had already proposed an entire new sewer system. The idea was actually very simple. Don't let sewage stay in the city. Catch it and move it away. But there was one problem. It would cost a lot of money. So the plan was proposed and delayed, proposed again and delayed again. For years, people simply kept putting it off until the Great Stink happened. Suddenly, a plan that had been stuck for years was approved very quickly. And what happened next was honestly quite remarkable. In just a few years, a huge underground sewer network started changing the city. And this building, the one that looked strangely like a palace, became one of the most dramatic pieces left behind by that system. It is called Crossness Pumping Station. And its job was very simple: to move London's unwanted waste as far away as possible. Large underground tunnels intercepted sewage from across the city before sending it east. Eventually, it all arrived here, where giant steam-powered pumps pushed it even further away. But what surprised me most was this. Bazalgette was not just solving the problem in front of him. He deliberately designed the system to handle roughly twice London's population at the time, because he believed this city would keep growing. And history proved he was right. Even more surprising, parts of London's sewer system today are still using infrastructure built in the Victorian era. But this still doesn't answer one question. If this was just a sewage station, why build it like this? What fascinated me most was not really the engineering, but someone designed this place very, very seriously. If this was only about function, it really did not need to look like this. Colorful iron columns, detailed decoration, arched window and doors, a space so symmetrical it almost feels excessive. And if you look closely at some of the decorative details, they may not be random at all. It is believed some of the floral patterns, including fig and sand planet, both commonly used as laxatives in Victorian Britain, which feels strangely fitting. If it was intentional, Victorian humour was darker than I expected. But jokes aside, it still raises the same question. Why would anyone go this far for a functional building? Even today, there is no single answer. Some believe it reflected Victorian pride in large engineering projects. Others say a beautiful environment helped improve morale. Or maybe when the engineering projects finally solved London's biggest problem, why not make it beautiful? In some ways, the building almost feels like it is saying, this is not just infrastructure. It deserves to be seen. When Crossness opened in 1865, it was celebrated with a grand ceremony. Politicians, business leaders, and important guests gathered here. Even the Prince of Wales, the future King Edward VII, came in person and officially started the engines. Today, a sewage station feels like one of the most basic parts of a city, something most people hardly think about. But in the 19th century, it was revolutionary. Just a few years earlier, London had nearly been overwhelmed by its own sewage. And now, they had finally found a way to keep the city functioning. So this was not just an engineering achievement. It also feels like a statement. London would no longer be crushed by its own growth. But the story does not really end here. Because the truth is, we're still living inside decisions made by Victorian London. Today, we rarely stop to think, where does everything go? Water flows away, rubbish disappears, sewage leaves our sight. And everything feels completely normal. But cities do not clean themselves. Someone redesigned how a city lives with its own mess. And one of the most interesting details is this. Victoria Embankment, the place where tourists walk, locals jog, and people stop to enjoy the river, is itself part of the huge sewer project. Beneath our feet, a Victorian cistern had been quietly running for more than a century. Modern London is built, at least partly, on a 19th century public health crisis. Crossness is not a place most people would ever visit. Most Londoners have probably never even heard of it. But cities often function because someone dealt with the things most people would rather not think about. And perhaps the most remarkable thing is this. Most of the time, we do not even notice it is there.